And Steve Wesley is joining me right now. Steve Wesley of the Wesley Group of Venture Capitalists, ran for governor a couple of years ago. Importantly, you were at this dinner last night. Tell me what it was like.
Well, it was an exciting dinner. I think what was stunning to me is the president's dealing with so many things: potential meltdown in Europe, wars on two fronts, economic issues, partisanship in Washington. He was more pumped up, more vibrant, more articulate than I've seen him. I think he is ready to take his case to the American people, and I think he feels like he's passed health care. He has passed don't ask, don't tell, ended discrimination in the armed forces. We've just led a successful multinational effort in Libya with no casualties. I think he feels like he's got a good story. I think he's fired up about the election. I think he's going to do well.
We've been reading about campaign money. I want to talk about jobs. I want to talk about a focus on employment, because that's obviously his focus right now, but it's this great problem vexing the nation right now. What was discussed last night at this dinner about that, if anything?
Well, I can't share all the things that happened at the dinner, but I think Americans saw he is focused on jobs like a laser. He's come out with a bipartisan jobs plan. Virtually everything in his plan are things that Republicans have supported in the past. And I think if we can get this through, you're going to see him put the American economy back on track.
So I want to take it back to the dinner last night, if I can, a little bit. What was it like to be there?
What's exciting? I mean, you've got the most famous people in Silicon Valley, people that are literally changing the world, executives from Twitter, Facebook, Google, throw in Lady Gaga. It was an exciting night. But the president's still the star of the show.
How was the food?
I forgot.
See, it must have been pretty good then. In that kind of event, is there a lot of talk? I mean, is he listening to what's going on? Is he trying to get information about what's happening here in Silicon Valley?
Well, I think absolutely. I think what stuns people is the president's very good about giving people a chance to ask questions. A lot of elected officials, they come, they say their piece, and they exit stage left. The president spoke for just a few minutes and said, I want to throw it open to your questions. And he took questions on every issue you can imagine, from the Middle East to job creation to Silicon Valley issues. And I think everybody walked out thinking, this is a person who has total conversancy on what is going on in Silicon Valley and the American economy. Now, can he fix every problem? Probably not. But this is someone who really is smart, who gets it, and I think who listens pretty darn well.
We talked right before we went on the air about, and I mentioned in my last hit a little bit about the dynamic nature of hiring and technology, and that because it throws out the old with the new, it also throws out the old worker with the new. Do you get a sense this president understands the ongoing need for both education and job reinvention?
Well, look, without a doubt, one of the things that Americans have always done better than other people is we reinvent ourselves. Things change.
But it's very different in a post-industrial economy, right? I mean, if you work for Ford for 40 years, you got to reinvent yourself within the same company, but you got the same job. The employment situation in technology isn't like that. Your company changes, you work at Hewlett-Packard, you're out the door 10 years later.
No, and again, this is what made America great. In the old days, people did agriculture for hundreds of years. You never had to reinvent yourselves. Americans were the first ones that could show we could reinvent ourselves not once, but multiple times in the industrial age. Now we're doing it again in the technology age. And the tough part is you have to do it faster, and that's why the president's been a champion for retraining the American workforce. He talked extensively last night about the importance of community colleges. Not every American has to have, or maybe even should have, a four-year college degree, but you need to have at least a two-year community college credential tech training to be a part of the workforce in the 21st century. The president gets that. He spoke on it extensively.
And sometimes Silicon Valley has some particular pet issues that are really important that people here seem to find more importance in than the rest of the nation. What to you is the most important thing that needs to change about policy coming out of D.C. right now?
Well, look, there are plenty of issues.
And I know you're kind of involved in both a little bit, but
no, I mean there are plenty of issues that are important in Silicon Valley. We want to see more to expand the quota for H-1B visas, to get more of these highly educated entrepreneurs who want to come here and start companies in the future. That's important. We want to see more technology training to prepare our employees to get the jobs in the 21st century. There's over 1.5 million job descriptions in the United States that aren't being filled. Why? Because people need the technology training. But I think what people are really looking for, forget Silicon Valley, they're looking for someone to be a bipartisan problem solver, to bring people together. And I think the president has showed, especially over the last few weeks, he's been the adult in the room. He's coming up with bipartisan solutions. I'm hoping that America's ready to get behind and pass the jobs bill, get the economy back on track.
Let's talk a little. You have given the president a lot of money over the years. You've bundled some money as well as been to these dinners. I know you were at this dinner with John Doerr's house with the luminaries. I remember Mark Zuckerberg was there, Steve Jobs was there, Larry Ellison was there, you was there. What are these like? I'm not going to shell out this kind of bread for this thing. So put me in the room. Are people nervous when they sit? You know, Larry Ellison is not a guy who can imagine being very nervous terribly often, but was he? What are they like?
Look, I think everybody, when you're sitting there with the President of the United States, knowing the magnitude of the issues he deals with every day, is just a little bit impressed. And so I think it was an extraordinary group of people. Like each person there felt it was an honor to be there. You had some of the most storied people in American history for the last 50 years.
Sure.
It was a fascinating dinner, and I think what everybody felt was the President listened. He asked questions about my particular area, whether it was patent reform at the FDA, which the head of Genentech was interested in, whether it was security issues that people like Facebook were interested in, or Twitter. The president had complete conversancy on the issues. It was a fascinating evening. Everybody, I think, walked out, Republicans and Democrats in the room.
Sure.
I mean, the president came to get their advice on how to get the country moving again. Well, everybody walked out impressed.
And the news from the world of technology in the time just since that dinner, I mean, Steve Jobs obviously leaving the company this time, and a lot of people sort of paying a renewed attention to his role at that company. Mark Zuckerberg's face on placards in the Arab Spring. It's interesting that the president sort of plugged into that a little bit.
I think this president is probably the most technology-oriented president we've ever had. He's been out here repeated times. He comes to people here, again, Republicans and Democrats, for advice. It's no surprise that in the last election, the president won Silicon Valley 75% to 25%.
Now, you noticed last night, you said the president was a lot more engaged, a lot more energetic, maybe. What was his rapport like with Lady Gaga? How was his response? It seems like such an unlikely pairing.
Well, look, I can't comment on all that. All I can say is the president has a great sense of humor, and it's just a little bit surreal to see some of the most famous business executives in the world, the most powerful person, leader in the Western world, and Lady Gaga all in the same room talking policy. And it was a fascinating evening, and it was fun to be part of it.
And the heels were?
The heels were at least 8 foot tall. Lady Gaga was, in fact, taller than you or the president that night.
Okay, we were going to have to get some for Emily. Steve Wesley, really, thanks a lot. Appreciate your insight.
Good
there.
to be here.
Emily?